Who could have imagined that excavating a mysterious ruin would trigger an ancient seal, and from that moment on, everything would turn into a catastrophe for all of humanity? A red, bloody, sinister mist rapidly spread through every city, and humans trapped within it could not withstand the corruption. They all lost their sanity and went mad or collapsed dead on the spot. Other living beings, however, for the most part transformed into grotesque and terrifying forms, gaining strange and unusual powers and becoming monstrous beasts. Wherever these beasts roamed, cities were reduced to rubble. Fear spread like a plague, and the military tried to contain the monsters' advance by dropping bombs everywhere. Amid destruction and monsters, a man was screaming for someone. Yet the boy was not afraid and, with his body slightly altered, shouted for Qiao Chui, asking where she was. When he received no response, he began pushing forward through the monsters, eliminating them with ease, as if he were the true monster of that place, a strange aura pouring out of his body. He heard a noise and, even consumed by rage, managed to calm himself a little, walking while calling the girl's name. He found a small doll on the ground and, upon touching it, his hand returned to normal. He began to cry because he could not find her, and let out a scream so powerful that the entire place started to tremble, asking where she was. 3 days earlier, a strange red mist had appeared in several regions. The authorities asked citizens not to panic, urging them to stay home and avoid unnecessary outings. Inside a car were the boy and a girl when an army soldier banged on the window, shouting for them to move the car immediately. The man driving said that apparently it was impossible to trust a single word from those politicians, as the army had begun to mobilize. So how could that still be called a natural disaster? The girl clung to her brother, saying she was scared, but he told her to stay calm because he was by her side, though he glanced to the side, wondering what that red mist could be amid so much commotion. Suddenly, a car crashed on top of the bridge and fell rapidly. The protagonist tried to protect his sister, telling her to duck as fast as possible, and the car fell right on top of them. He asked his father and mother if they were okay. The father said his leg was trapped, while the mother was still somewhat disoriented, asking what had just happened. Suddenly, the four of them heard an extremely loud noise. The protagonist turned around, asking what that was, and a monster had appeared right in front of them as the army tried to contain it, while people ran in desperation. The father shouted for them to get out of the car as quickly as possible. The protagonist kicked the door off, got out with his sister, and tried to save his mother. She screamed for him to grab his sister and run as fast as possible, saying he did not need to worry about them, but the protagonist refused to abandon them, saying he would get them out of there. More monsters began to appear, attacking people who begged for help, and the sister started trembling in fear at the sight. The mother panicked and grabbed her son's hand, screaming for him to go now, and the two tried to smile to show that everything would be okay. The father said that now he needed to be the man and take responsibility, because he was the older brother, and the mother asked him to take care of Qiao Chui. Suddenly, something fell onto the car, completely destroying it and throwing the protagonist and his sister backward, another monster having fallen on top of them, and Qiao Chui began screaming desperately for their parents. A monster looked at them, and the protagonist already knew what he had to do, and while his sister screamed for their parents, he began pulling her, saying they needed to get out of there. Chaos was spreading everywhere. Monsters attacked both from the sky and the ground. As they ran, animals and humans were going mad. He did not know what was happening, and the monsters quickly took over the city, leaving them with nothing to do but hide and try to survive. The protagonist tried to look carefully to see if they could already leave, and when he saw the monster moving away, he breathed a little easier, saying that at least they were gone. His sister, completely terrified, began to feel a strong pain in her head, and the protagonist asked what was wrong. She said she was not feeling very well. A mark began to appear on her face and also on the protagonist's, yet he felt almost nothing because he was too worried about her. Looking at a mirror beside him, he noticed the marks appearing and asked what that was, then looked around and realized the mist was everywhere and wondered if it was from breathing in too much of that red mist. His sister was in great pain and could barely keep her eyes open. He took some water and a cloth, asking her to cover her mouth and nose as quickly as possible. However, he began to feel something strange, crouched down saying it was very hot, and that something was coming out of his body and he could not stop it. Qiao Chui noticed that her brother was feeling something and asked what was wrong. His hand began to tremble violently and he tried to hide it, saying he was fine. One of the monsters walking nearby heard the noise and began to approach. The protagonist starts screaming for it to stop, and his sister becomes even more frightened, saying she is scared. The monster finds the two of them, and the protagonist is shocked when he realizes they have been discovered, as the monster starts running straight toward them. He grabs his sister and tries to run as fast as possible out of the supermarket, but another flying monster lands right in front of them, cutting off their escape. Surrounded, his sister asks what they are going to do, and the protagonist holds her as tightly as he can, telling her not to be afraid because her older brother is there. An even larger monster approaches, and soon they are surrounded by countless monsters. The protagonist looks at them and wonders if today really is the day they are going to die. With no other choice, he shouts to his sister that they need to go back into the market as fast as possible, picking up a piece of wood from the ground and saying that it is even more dangerous outside. He attacks a monster, but it bites the wood and destroys it with ease, then immediately counterattacks. The protagonist tries to defend himself by holding the top of the monster's mouth with his hand and the bottom with his foot, but he is thrown backward with tremendous force. Suddenly, an arrow strikes the monster in the eye. Xiao Chui asks if he is okay, saying she will help him, as she had found a crossbow inside the store. The wounded monster begins attacking her, and the protagonist screams for her to run. Xiao Chui runs as fast as she can, and her brother yells for her not to look back. The marks on his body grow stronger and stronger. He starts coughing up blood, and something begins to emerge from within his body once again. Seeing that his sister is in danger, the protagonist awakens a terrifying power. An explosion of aura bursts from his body, and he brings a wall crashing down onto the monster. Consumed by rage, he keeps attacking nonstop, even after the monster is already dead, shouting that he needs to kill. His sister panics and calls out to her brother, but he does not respond. Desperate, she runs over and hugs him, begging him to stop. With tears in her eyes, she pleads with him to stop. The protagonist begins to remember their parents' deaths, his mother screaming for him to run, and his father telling him that now he has to protect his sister. The memory is interrupted by his sister's voice calling his name. He regains consciousness, apologizes for worrying her, and asks if everything is okay now. He starts to speak but notices another monster about to attack his sister, shouts a warning and manages to pull her out of the way, saving her life. The monster prepares to attack again, and Qiao Rao grabs an iron bar and strikes the creature with great force, knocking it back and destroying everything around them. Amid the dust, he tells his sister to stay hidden, saying he will deal with the monsters, but she refuses, saying he cannot go alone. The protagonist says that the large monster is watching them and that he needs to lure it away. Xiao Chui clings to her brother, afraid that he will lose control again, and says he cannot go. Qiao Rao tries to calm her, saying that this time he will not lose control and asks her to just wait. She asks him to promise that he will come back safe and sound, and he smiles, saying it is a promise. He leaves the market with the staff in his hand, saying that if he is right, hunting these beasts and absorbing the red energy can make him stronger. Qiao Rao stops in front of the largest monster, points the staff at it, and says that if he defeats that creature, he will have enough power to protect his family, so the monster must die. However, the monsters simply ignore everything he says and rush at him. He asks if he is not even worthy of being taken seriously, because if that is the case, he will eliminate them one by one until he finishes them all. After understanding a bit more of his current strength, he begins to slaughter the monsters around him. Even so, one of the monsters manages to bite him, causing intense pain. He becomes even more enraged, his hands transform, and he splits the monster in half. With a completely different appearance, he asks if that is what it feels like to have power, because it is wonderful. One of the army's aircraft begins flying overhead, drawing the monster's attention as it lets out a ferocious roar. The protagonist realizes that something strange is happening to him. Suddenly, a missile is launched exactly where he is. At that very moment, Xiao Chui goes to the hole in the wall and asks her brother if he is okay. The protagonist panics, screaming for his sister not to come out. The missile hits its target, causing a massive explosion. The helicopter flying overhead shouts that there are survivors there. Before he loses consciousness, Qiao Rao hears people saying to check the area. One of them says that the protagonist is already infected, so they need to leave him alone. However, that girl is still pure, so she must be taken. He manages to see his sister being placed inside the helicopter, while army agents say they need to move as fast as possible because the monsters will return soon. Qiao Rao stretches out his hand towards the helicopter, calling out to his sister. On the verge of passing out, he begins to see his sister surrounded by flames, asking why he did not save her. She starts screaming, and the fire engulfs the memory. The protagonist reaches out his hand, shouting his sister's name. He wakes up completely desperate, breathing heavily, saying that he had the same dream again, that more than half a year has passed and he still does not know where his sister is. He starts walking, saying that he was lucky not to have been exposed when his sister was taken by those people. He searched all the local shelters, but there is still no sign of her. To find his sister, he joined the Frontier Patrol, the lowest-ranking unit in the army, and became a low-ranking soldier. In such a chaotic world, only the army is authorized to collect information and travel freely at the frontier outpost of Chichi City. The patrol team captain, Jia Jun, was waiting. Qiao Rao apologizes for being late for his shift. Another soldier says that apparently it is that useless rookie again. The captain kicks the protagonist, calls him an idiot, and asks where he was this time, since he is very late. As Qiao Rao climbs up, his captain says that once the bosses arrive, they can finally leave, and that if he messes anything up this time, his life will be turned into hell. Half a year ago, the Crimson Mist erupted. Most cities fell into ruins and became habitats for aberrations. Along with the Red Mist, a mysterious Crimson Spire also appeared. The surviving humans can only barely survive in the frontier lands, far away from the Spire and the Crimson Mist. He remembers the large monster he tried to face, wondering if that thing could still be there. The captain says that the Special Response Unit is out there, and that they just need to stay put and do their job. Because if even the Special Unit cannot hold the front line, then what can they, a bunch of loose pieces, do? His two subordinates ask if he is joking. That is the famous Special Response Unit, so how could they fall so easily since they have been crushing aberrations all along the way? At his combat post, the protagonist thinks that even after all this time, he still hates the smell of that mist, because it awakens the primal bloodlust of creatures, making them turn on each other. He notices that the mist is dissipating and realizes that something is heading toward them. One of the soldiers next to the captain says that something is wrong and asks him to take a look. However, the captain asks what the situation is, since he cannot make a big fuss over nothing. They move to the middle of the street. The soldier asks why the mist is advancing toward them. Suddenly, two people appear running in their direction. The soldier shouts to the captain that it is the Special Response Unit. The captain asks the two what is happening. However, the special agents only scream for them to retreat. Suddenly, the two are attacked. The captain shouts for everyone to retreat immediately. However, one of the monsters manages to grab the captain, who screams that it seems his life is over. Qiao Rao, who is on top of one of the buildings, only watches and hears people screaming that the monsters are there. Without thinking twice, he jumps straight into the mist, crashing down onto one of the monsters and killing it easily, saying that the first one is done. Another monster tries to attack him, but he rips off its head, saying that the second one is dead. He begins absorbing the red energy. The protagonist remarks that this is great because after absorbing that one, he became a little stronger. So what would happen if he absorbed a few more? Monsters start appearing around him. Qiao Rao releases his bloodlust, telling the monsters not to disappoint him. However, something destroys the monsters before he can even act. He turns around asking who could have done that. A girl begins to appear. She is the captain of the Blazing Blood Detachment. Her name is Song Rui. Qiao Rao becomes worried, seeing that she is someone from the Special Response Unit. He thinks that he needs to return to the post. The captain gives orders to her unit, saying that they cannot let a single monster escape alive and that they need to clear them all out. The agents point their weapons at the protagonist. He raises his hands, telling them not to shoot because he is a soldier, Qiao Rao, from the patrol team. However, the people aiming their weapons shout to open fire, destroying a monster that was about to attack the protagonist. The soldiers relay the information, saying that it is confirmed and the target has been eliminated. The captain starts approaching him and asks where his weapon is. He thinks that now he is screwed. One of the soldiers says that everyone needs to retreat from the forward outpost to the temporary defensive line. People were blocking the passage, saying that no one could enter without Commander Rui's permission. The captain begins reading the forward outpost report. Sector A had a total of 37 fatalities. Among them, the Special Response Division, Blazing Blood Squad, suffered 2 deaths. The patrol squad had 30 deaths. This concludes the personnel loss report for that sudden incident. Qiao Rao asks why he is being detained, since he was also one of the victims. The captain looks at the report, saying that at 1723, the protagonist disappeared for 2 hours, and after he returned, the Blood Mist riot began. She asks why, questioning whether he does not at least owe an explanation. Qiao Rao thinks that he needs to make something up as quickly as possible. He says that he ended up falling asleep for a while in some nearby ruins, and that he had already informed his captain beforehand. One of the protagonist's teammates raises his hand, saying that this kid is always late for missions, and that the captain is always irritated. Qiao Rao starts getting angry, thinking that if that guy keeps talking, he will have to eliminate him. The soldier continues, saying that the protagonist does not need to slander the captain. Rui begins to think and says that from the looks of it, the patrol team has more problems than she expected. Jia Jun sneezes and ends up coughing blood. At the same time, one of his subordinates, worried, asks the captain if he's all right. The doctor tells him to relax a bit since Jia Jun is not dying because all his tests came back normal. The subordinate asks the doctor if that really looks normal. Rui continues analyzing the protagonist, saying that according to his file, he only completed basic training 3 months ago. However, in the battle they just had, even her division suffered 2 deaths. Even so, the protagonist managed to survive. Qiao Rao lowers his head and says that he was just afraid of dying because at school he was an athlete, so his legs are faster than most. When he saw the mist approaching, he simply ran first. The captain questions why he enlisted in the army if he is so afraid, or whether he has some other reason. Qiao Rao begins to think that over the past 6 months while searching for his sister, he has been hunting and absorbing low-level beasts and gradually learned to control his transformation, switching between human form and beast form. 6 months living like a lone wolf, avoiding people, scouring every ruin, visiting every human gathering place. Rui speaks again, saying that as a soldier, the protagonist clung to life out of fear and abandoned his post, concealing the truth. She asks if he knows what the consequences are. Qiao Rao asks if he will be executed by firing squad. The captain approaches and speaks very softly to the protagonist, asking what he is hiding in his hands. He realizes that she truly noticed. She continues pressing, asking why so many lies, what he is hiding, and what the true purpose behind all this is. Suddenly, everything starts to shake. Rui asks if that is an earthquake. However, the protagonist thinks it is not because that sensation is very familiar. He quickly stands up from the chair and shouts for everyone to run, thinking that a horde of beasts is approaching. However, the captain thinks he is trying to escape right in front of her, treating her as if she were nothing. Quickly, she slams the protagonist's head into the ground, causing a small crack. The protagonist's teammate asks her to be a bit lighter with the punishment. However, the ground begins to collapse and all of them fall into a crater. People look around asking where they are. The protagonist wonders that they are underground. Rui tells one of her subordinates that it is very dark down there and that they need to prepare lighting. The protagonist's companion says that he is a walking disaster because wherever he goes, trouble follows. However, Qiao Rao tells him to complain after they get out of there alive. His friend asks if they are trapped there. The protagonist says, not necessarily. When they turn on the lights, they realize they are in a labyrinth dug by a beast. The captain tells everyone to remain calm and check their weapons, because they need to maintain formation and never leave their backs exposed. Suddenly, they hear a noise. The protagonist's friend asks what that is. He says that there is an air current because he can hear the sound of wind. The man says that if there is wind, then there must be an exit, so he will check it out. After moving a little closer, the man says that there really is wind there, adding that the protagonist is useless at everything, but when it comes to escaping, he is the best. He turns his back, telling the commander that there is wind there and that there must be an exit just ahead. A monster takes advantage of the moment his guard is down and tries to attack him from behind. The commander shouts for him to duck and swiftly slices the monster's neck. The bodily fluid from that beetle splashes near the young man, corroding the ground. They point out that the fluid is apparently highly corrosive and therefore must not come into contact with the body. She scolds them, saying that without her order, none of them have permission to act on their own. She looks at the protagonist, saying that apparently he really is very good at avoiding danger, and emphasizes that when they get out of there, he will have to explain himself properly. Qiao Rao takes a deep breath and thinks that she truly knows about his secret, yet she did not want to expose him in front of everyone, which makes him wonder what she is really planning. They begin to hear a loud sound, indicating that something is coming toward them. Several other monsters start appearing and attack at the same time. The monsters surge forward and they do everything they can to slow them down while running toward one of the exits. The protagonist suddenly stops running while the captain tells him not to stop and to keep running, but he looks back and says that apparently the swarm of insects seems to have stopped. They begin to walk forward, looking ahead to see what is happening there. Suddenly, an even larger monster appears. The protagonist's friend says that monster is a tyrant class and is absorbing the red mist. Yan Rao realizes that this is not good because the monster is converting the red mist into energy, and he shouts for everyone to be extremely careful because it is very dangerous. Rui fires her weapon and the monster releases its condensed energy. Her shot manages to hit the side of the monster's face, but the energy is coming straight toward her head. Yan Rao shouts for her to get out of the way, but she cannot move. Without hesitating, the protagonist reveals his true strength to save her. She is impressed as she looks at him and tries to speak, but Yan Rao interrupts, saying that if they manage to get out of there alive, he will explain everything to her properly. A little apprehensive, she begins to wonder whether he will really be able to do anything, since her attacks had been ineffective, and she asks him to be very careful. The protagonist just smiles. He starts attacking the monster, shouting for it to come at him with everything it has because that monster is a tyrant class, just like that thing. The system displays the monster's classification as a scout, hound tyrant class, calamity behemoth. Yan Rao attacks it repeatedly while wondering how much stronger he will become if he absorbs that monster. After several attacks, he looks at the monster and thinks that it is extremely tough, since a normal beast would already have been torn apart, and by its size, it is like an armored vehicle. The protagonist stares at the beast and says that apparently it must have devoured many of its own kind. The monster tries to attack him, but he manages to dodge, saying that at least the monster is very slow and may have invested all of its enhancements into its own defense. Yan Rao releases his power again, saying that it is ridiculous that the monster cannot hit a moving target. The others begin firing, wondering if they are dreaming. The patrol friend sees the protagonist completely different as he charges at the monster and thinks that this is the guy who always runs the fastest and fears death more than anyone. So what exactly is this guy? The captain joins the conversation, saying that the protagonist is an experimental subject secretly developed by the United Government to fight against the creatures. The man asks if she is really saying that this guy, who took 3 months to pass basic training and runs from danger faster than anyone, is an experimental subject to combat creatures. She says that is exactly the case. The man asks if she already knew the whole story. Rui says no, that she only confirmed the protagonist's identity when he blocked the creature's attack aimed at her. The team's vice captain, Lin Yongzi, begins to wonder whether the UG truly has an experimental subject or if his captain is hiding something. Rui continues explaining that the protagonist escaped from the laboratory and somehow ended up on the Frontier Patrol team. The man asks whether the last outbreak of the red mist was because of him. She says they cannot rule out that possibility, and that is why she needs to investigate further. The captain looks at the soldier and says that all the information he saw and heard is the most secret of all and therefore must not be revealed to anyone, asking if he understands. The man says yes and that he will not tell anyone. Meanwhile, the battle between the protagonist and the monster continues. The monster tries to condense energy again and fire, but the protagonist manages to dodge. However, he realizes that the attack is heading toward his team. He shouts for everyone to get out of the way, and the attack strikes exactly where they were. By a narrow margin, they manage to escape. An unnamed patrol soldier asks if he is still alive, but when he gets up, he realizes that the vice captain saved his life. As the dust begins to settle, the soldier is horrified when he sees the vice captain's leg. Yongzi tells him not to worry, saying that it does not pose a risk to his life. The soldier tells the vice captain that he is from the Special Operations Unit and still did this for a humble patrol soldier like him. Yongzi just smiles and says that trading a leg for a life is a good deal. The soldier says that even so, the vice captain's mission should be focused on fighting beasts, and that losing his precious ability for a soldier like him is not worth it. Yongzi emphasizes that he did not become a soldier just to kill those damned beasts. He exists to protect, as the last shield of humanity, and he can never abandon anyone standing in front of him. The soldier is left speechless. Suddenly, a loud boom is heard and the protagonist is hurled violently backward. He thinks that the red mist energy has been depleted and that he can barely maintain his bestialization with one arm. That creature is the Steel Shield Spiny Beetle, Tyrant class. The protagonist realizes that it is a true Tyrant class monster and extremely troublesome. The monster charges at him again with full force, but suddenly an explosion occurs on the monster's head. Yan Rao realizes it was the captain. She shouts that he cannot die there because there are still many things he needs to explain more clearly. Suddenly, the monster begins to emit a sound as if it were laughing. The captain is shocked and asks if it is really laughing. A pressure spreads through the area and multiple tunnels begin releasing red mist. She thinks that this was already expected because those interconnected tunnels allow the beast to easily transfer red mist from other locations, replenishing its own strength, and even its wounds begin to heal rapidly. At this rate, the monster will return to its peak state again. Moreover, she dares to say that the previous red mist eruption at the forward outpost was also caused by that monster. Rui runs to the protagonist, saying that they will not be able to win this fight and that they need to retreat immediately. But Yan Rao refuses, saying that the monster must die because where he comes from, there is a saying, "A warrior never goes back on his word. Break your limits here and now, you have no other choice." He adds that by summoning the red mist, he also restored his own energy, and now that the monster cannot move recklessly, this is their best chance to attack. Rui remains somewhat hesitant and shouts that if they fail, the protagonist could end up dying. However, he prepares for battle, saying that he has already paid the toll at the gates of hell countless times, so one more time does not matter. Seeing the determination all around, the captain is convinced and prepares her weapon, saying that they only have one chance and cannot miss. She prepares to fire, saying that she will release all her power to blow apart the armor on the beast's head. Then the protagonist must seize that opportunity to destroy the brain directly, because that is the only way to eliminate that beast. She focuses, and when she finally aims exactly where she wants, she fires and shouts for the protagonist to advance immediately. The shot hits the target perfectly, and the protagonist rushes forward thinking that this is great because the head armor is indeed broken. He lands a strike, and seeing that it worked, begins attacking repeatedly as fast as possible, shouting for the monster to die. The beast's blood splashes everywhere as the protagonist continues attacking. Watching from afar, the captain asks if they really managed to do it. Suddenly, an explosion occurs, throwing the protagonist backward. She runs to him, asking if he's all right, but then notices something in his pocket. When she takes it out, she sees that it is a photograph. A black crystal that was in Yan Rao's hand begins pulling in the red mist. Suddenly, the crystal starts to sink into his hand and fuse with his body. In his subconscious, the protagonist asks where he is and who that is, but then realizes that the person he is seeing is himself, which feels very strange, since he cannot control his own body. He begins floating in that place and thinks that, apparently, he has completely turned into a beast, wondering whether this place is hell or his life flashing before his eyes. Suddenly, something starts glowing in front of him, and he realizes that the image resembles DNA, though he does not know why it is glowing. Suddenly, he begins moving his arm and realizes that he can move freely. Moreover, he feels that something is lodged inside his chest. When he looks down, he sees that the black crystal that was inside that giant beast is now in his chest and seems to be some kind of energy body because, until now, it was in his hand, so how was it transferred into his chest? Suddenly, the crystal begins to glow and all the mist around starts to gather. The protagonist realizes that the crystal is actually absorbing the red mist. Moreover, it can not only absorb the red mist but also store it. And even if he absorbs more red mist than before and transforms further into a beast, he does not need to worry about losing control. That is because the crystal functions like an insurance policy. When he loses control, the crystal starts retrieving the red mist from his body and restores his sanity. In this way, he can absorb alien beasts without hesitation and continue evolving. However, the crystal begins to show a small crack, and now he no longer needs to worry about counting every time he nearly dies. Even so, he realizes that the newly formed crystal has limited storage capacity and at this rate will eventually explode. He thinks that the move used by that giant beetle consumed an enormous amount of red mist, and since he can absorb the red mist, then he needs to let the two converge. Sometime later, lying in a clinic bed, the protagonist wakes up with the red mist leaking from his own eye. He wakes in panic, shouting for the mist to gather to him and starts condensing it into energy. At that exact moment, Rui enters the room after hearing his scream. She's startled and asks what he is trying to do. He yells at her to get out of the way because he can no longer control it and ends up firing the attack. A massive explosion erupts inside the hospital. 5 minutes earlier, the unnamed soldier goes to the captain to ask about the vice captain's leg. However, she interrupts him, saying that as a soldier, he was already prepared for this, so there is no need to blame himself. She enters Yongzi's room and he asks what the story behind the protagonist is because he has never heard that the UG had a test subject. She shows him some information saying that his case is top secret and therefore the vice captain needs to focus on recovery and not worry about anything else. She starts to leave the room saying that she has already requested his transfer to the logistics department at headquarters and that from then on he will be able to rest properly. The vice captain says that he will report this matter honestly to her father, Chief of Staff Song Lian, because he trusts that he will make his own judgment. Rui becomes irritated and asks the vice captain who exactly his superior is, emphasizing that from that moment on his communication privileges are frozen, and therefore he will stay there and go nowhere. Outside, she asks the unnamed soldier which room the protagonist is in. He answers that it is Ward 314. Shortly after they arrive at the door, she tells the soldier to stand guard at the entrance, emphasizing that no one is allowed to enter that room without her order. When she opens the door, she is met with the attack. She is shocked and asks what he is doing, but the protagonist only yells at her to get out of the way and fires the attack. Rui manages to duck quickly, the soldier also dodges, and the attack blasts forward, destroying everything in its path. In the next room, the vice captain realizes that the building has been pierced as if it were nothing, and concludes that it was probably the protagonist who did it. He wonders how long the captain will be able to hide that. The unnamed soldier lying on the ground starts trembling, asking why he is always unlucky, and screams for help, saying that this is terrifying and that he does not want to die. Rui starts examining the destruction caused by the attack, wondering whether this is the move of the beetle they fought earlier. She also wonders why Yan Rao can use the abilities of an aberration directly without a bestialization weapon. She looks at the protagonist and says that he owes her many explanations. They go up to the hospital rooftop, and after the protagonist explains a bit, the captain asks if he is really saying that he can not only absorb the core of an aberration, but also learn its abilities. Yan Rao says that, in addition, he can also absorb and store the crimson mist, since that crystal seems capable of self-repair. Rui begins to smile, saying that apparently he has many functions. Yan Rao transforms his hand into a monster's hand, saying that he indeed obtained the strength and abilities of those monsters. However, he could also slowly end up becoming one of them. Therefore, he wants to know whether someone like him can still be considered truly human. and, in her eyes, what he really appears to be. The captain says that the protagonist is simply himself, a unique existence. Whether human or monster depends only on how he uses the power granted to him. And the truth is that this power can be considered both a disaster and an extremely powerful weapon. She approaches him and says that at the moment he has two paths to choose from. The first is to join her squad and become a reserve soldier. The second is to be classified as a threat and eliminated, just like those aberrations. The protagonist asks why he would be eliminated. Rui points to what he just did to the buildings, questioning whether he truly thinks the troops currently in the city have the capability to do that. She herself admits that she does not have the necessary ability to defeat him in combat. However, she emphasizes that even if he is extremely powerful, believing he can deal with the UG alone is sheer arrogance. Moreover, joining her squad has its benefits such as status, intelligence, and resources, in addition to her handling any problems that may arise. The protagonist asks whether she is really willing to deal with an element as dangerous as him, someone she has just met whose power is still out of control, and that the price to recruit him must be quite high, so she likely has an objective behind all this. The captain says that he really is smart and that for a certain reason she needs him. Even so, she asks him to trust her, because they are not enemies. She says that perhaps he can think of it as a business transaction and shows him the photo she picked up earlier. Yan Rao shouts at her, asking why she has that photo. The captain tells him not to underestimate her, because if she wants to investigate his entire past, that is child's play to her. Rui states that if he joins Blazing Blood, then she will use her high-level intelligence network and all resources at her disposal to help him find his younger sister. The protagonist begins to think about the situation because there really is a limit to what he can do alone, especially without information. As the captain said, with a higher rank and status in the army, he will be able to investigate more places, and it will be easier to move around. He ends up agreeing to her terms. However, since she also needs him, he would like to ask for a small salary increase, because all his previous money was spent searching for his sister. The captain calls Yan Rao a soldier and says that she, as the captain of Blazing Blood, approves him as a reserve soldier, with salary and benefits at the highest standard. Her first order to him is to leave immediately and take care of all the paperwork. The protagonist says that he understands the order and will immediately go to the patrol team to handle the transfer. Before he leaves, she says that she paid for all the damage he caused at the hospital and that, even without urgency, she will deduct it little by little from his salary. As he leaves, Rui begins to think about her uncle, believing that she will surely find a way to save him. Yan Rao continues walking away, annoyed at having to pay those bills. Rui watches the protagonist, thinking that her instincts are screaming that he holds the key to turning an aberration back into a human being. In Chi-Chi City, at the patrol team in the garrison building, the unnamed soldier appears and the protagonist asks if he is also going to the special response unit. The unnamed soldier says that the captain and the vice captain think highly of him and that, although he entered the logistics department, he and the protagonist will be able to look out for each other from now on. Yan Rao starts wondering what that guy's name is, since he had never paid attention to him before. Suddenly, the scene shifts to Captain Jia Jun, who says that he is fine. The protagonist looks back and sees everyone gathered. A man says that some time ago Jia Jun slapped him because of that mute woman, and that now he is like a stray dog, begging the city defense team for his retirement as a member of the force. The man kicks Jia Jun, pressing him against the wall. This is the captain of the Chi-Chi City defense team named Zhang Shi. The unnamed soldier becomes completely furious when he sees his captain, even injured, being treated that way, and charges at them all. However, he is easily restrained by the others, yet continues shouting for them to release the captain immediately. Shi continues humiliating Jia Jun, ordering him to kneel and lick the mud off his shoes, or else he will break that boy's arm and give it to Jia Jun to use as a crutch. Jia Jun, without strength to resist, begins to kneel. However, the protagonist holds him back, telling him not to kneel, emphasizing that his captain helped him a lot before, and now it is his turn to repay that favor. The protagonist shouts that he is there now, and that if anyone dares to touch even a single hair on his captain's head, he will break their bones and burn them like firewood. The entire city defense group charges at him, asking whether he is truly seeking death. However, Yan Rao begins to move rapidly and defeats them all with a single strike each. The force was so great that the last man hit was hurled violently against the wall, creating a hole. Another member of the defense department shouts at the protagonist that their captain is a ranked warrior, so how does he dare attack them like this? Because now he is dead. Shi becomes enraged when he realizes that the protagonist took only 4 seconds to defeat all the men who attacked him. He wonders how he can possibly be that fast. Shi pulls out his weapon and points it at the protagonist, calls him patrol trash, and questions how he dares challenge the city guard, then fires. The protagonist simply dodges with a smile, swiftly grabs the gun from the captain's hand, says the firing speed is far too slow, and crushes the weapon with his bare hands. He states that Sure does not even have 1% of Rui's speed. Sure feels humiliated and pulls out a knife, trying to attack the protagonist, but once again he is disarmed with extreme ease. Yan Rao grabs the city defense captain by the neck and begins lifting him, saying that apparently he had said he would make Jia Jun kneel. Sure starts trembling and asks what the protagonist is trying to do. Yan Rao says that now it is the city defense captain's turn to kneel and slams him into the ground with tremendous force. Sure passes out immediately. The entire city defense team cannot believe that the protagonist actually dodged bullets and crushed a standard pistol with his bare hands. They grab their unconscious captain and flee, shouting that the protagonist is a monster. Yan Rao thinks that the physical strength enhanced by the Beast Core has exceeded his expectations. The unnamed soldier walks up to Yan Rao and says that he looked like a god of war just now. The protagonist asks if he is alright, and the friend replies that he is fine, since his body can take quite a beating. Jia Jun starts smiling and thanks Yan Rao for helping him. The protagonist asks why his captain is thanking him, and says that Jia Jun always took care of him, so now that he can protect him, this is simply what he should do. Jia Jun remains worried and asks what will happen if the city defense team comes looking for trouble. The unnamed soldier tells him not to worry because now Yan Rao and he are members of the Special Response Unit, and the city defense team would not dare do anything to them. Late at night, at the temporary base of the Special Response Unit, Rui asks whether all the transfer paperwork has been completed. Yan Rao answers that it has. The captain says that she has already sent his registration to headquarters and that it has been approved. The protagonist comments that she really is very efficient. Holding the certificate in his hand, he asks whether that means he is now an official member. She says no and tells him not to rush, because what comes next is the real test. She emphasizes that he must depart immediately for headquarters in Rucheng to participate in the entry evaluation for the Blazing Blood Special Response Unit's combat division. She says that with the strength he currently has, she believes passing the test will not be a problem. Yan Rao starts smiling, says he understands, and asks her to just wait because he will set a new record. In the city of Rucheng, several army vehicles drive through the streets. Inside them are the unnamed soldier, the protagonist, and the captain. She introduces the place, saying that this is Rucheng City, the capital of the U.G, and that the Blazing Blood headquarters is also located there. Yan Rao comments that he heard the minimum rank for an official Blazing Blood member is D rank warrior. He asks how these ranks are determined, since the unnamed soldier is very weak, yet is still taking the test for Blazing Blood. The unnamed soldier smiles and says he can take a good beating. Rui explains that he is joining the logistics team, not the combat team, so he does not need to take the combat evaluation. The unnamed soldier starts laughing and says that the logistics team also fights alongside the combat team. The captain tells the protagonist that they still have plenty of time before reaching their destination, and that they need to synchronize some information. She explains that people like her, who can use special abilities, are known as warriors. A warrior's combat power is divided into 6 levels: S, A, B, C, D, and E. The Special Response Unit headquarters has a unique evaluation system. The main attributes assessed are physical strength and endurance. As for aberrations, they are classified from weakest to strongest as Scout Class, Hound Class, Sovereign Class, Behemoth Class, and Calamity Class. Under normal circumstances, an E-rank warrior can defeat a Scout Class aberration. By the same logic, a D-rank warrior is equivalent to a Hound Class aberration. C and B-rank warriors are equivalent to Sovereign Class aberrations. A-rank warriors are equivalent to Behemoth Class aberrations. S-rank warriors are equivalent to Calamity Class aberrations. She adds that, in addition to this, the protagonist's affinity with a Beast Core also affects his classification. He asks what she means by that. The captain explains that, in the current world, only aberrations that have undergone mutations from the Crimson Mist possess special abilities. Human warriors, on the other hand, can only awaken special abilities by synchronizing with a Beast Core through core armaments. Physical condition, talent, and even luck affect affinity with the Beast Core, and the greater the affinity, the higher the quality and number of abilities awakened. She concludes that if a person cannot connect to a Beast Core, the highest rank they can reach is rank E. Suddenly, the car stops. One of the guards on the street informs them that the road is closed to traffic and asks them to turn back. The driver questions whether they really intend to stop the Special Response Unit. The guard replies that they are also on an official mission. As one of the cars passes, Rui notices something wrong. She thinks that this should only be the Blazing Blood entry evaluation. So why would the boss of the Green Vein group be present? Something is clearly not right. An hour later, at the Blazing Blood entry evaluation site, everyone has already gathered. An evaluator states that Blazing Blood is humanity's strongest shield. He also says it is the sharpest blade of the Special Response Unit. Lin Yongqin, chief examiner and A-rank warrior of Blazing Blood, states that he does not care about anyone's background, that once here everyone plays by the rules he sets, that pulling strings will not be tolerated, and that if they do not have what it takes, they should not even think about staying. He announces that the first phase of the evaluation will be the physical assessment and orders everyone to begin. The test is a 100-meter sprint carrying 50 kilograms. The protagonist bursts ahead of everyone and finishes in 5.10 seconds. The second test is electromagnetic force weightlifting. While the others struggle to lift 100 kilograms, the protagonist raises 500 kilograms without effort. Next comes the impact power test. Yan Rao throws a simple punch and completely shatters the machine, preventing any score calculation. 10 minutes later, he approaches the chief examiner and asks whether all events have concluded. Yongqin confirms and informs him that his score is 198. Everyone is shocked because the previous rookie record was only 140. Some begin to question whether he cheated, saying that if that is true, he is dead. Suddenly, another person arrives calling the instructor, saying that the young man's score far surpasses the previous record and that he cannot believe it. This man is Zhang Jin, the younger brother of the city defense captain who was humiliated earlier. The chief examiner replies that he personally supervised everything and that it was all recorded, asking whether Zhang Jin is accusing the examiner of turning a blind eye and letting the protagonist enter through the back door. Zhang Jin smiles sarcastically and says he would never dare do such a thing, but that he is very curious. He approaches the protagonist and asks if he is Yan Rao from the Chichi City patrol team. Yan Rao confirms and asks what that has to do with anything. Zhang Jin continues laughing and says it is nothing, that he simply wanted to greet someone from the same hometown. But inwardly, he thinks he must teach the protagonist a lesson, because the humiliation his older brother suffered will be repaid tenfold. Yan Rao observes Zhang Jin, wondering whether they truly came from the same city. The chief examiner says that the man's name is Zhang Jin, and that he is just one of those rich kids from the Chichi City defense team, asking whether the protagonist knows him, to which he replies, no. Even so, he thinks that everything now makes sense, because if that guy was also part of the defense team, then he is rotten to the last hair on his body. After everyone finishes, Yongqin announces the physical test results, saying that 30th place is Zhang San with 89 points, 31st and so on. Third place Zhang Jin with 123 points, second place Jin Ying with 135 points, and first place Yan Rao with 198 points. Jin Ying, a senior researcher from the Technical Intelligence Department, is impressed, thinking she only came to take the evaluation for fun, yet she did not expect such a strong rookie that year, which is very interesting. So she decides she will have to study him more closely. The chief examiner shouts that the top 15 will proceed to the next test, Beast Core Affinity. In an individual dorm room, Zhang Jin is completely furious, saying he should have taken first place, but he never imagined that two monsters would appear out of nowhere. Someone who was talking to him asks whether, if Zhang Jin's brother were not the Green Vein Group's dog, he would really be qualified for that evaluation. They emphasize that Zhang Jin only has one chance and must not mess everything up. Zhang Jin becomes even more irritated, saying that for his brother's sake he must enter the Blazing Blood group. At the Beast Core testing station, the group gathers again and Yongqin explains that the test is not complicated at all, as they only need to put on the bracelet and insert the Beast Core into it to start the test. He emphasizes that anyone with an affinity below 40% will be eliminated immediately, and says that if anyone is unsure, he will briefly explain what a Beast Core is. He explains that only Hound class aberrations or higher can produce a core, and the stronger the aberration, the higher the quality of the core produced. By fitting a core into aberration armaments, a warrior can use special abilities just like an aberration. Elemental power, control, or support all have different affinities with cores and will awaken different abilities according to that affinity and innate talent. The bracelet used is a lower-level core storage device, capable only of testing affinity without considering abilities. He explains that once they officially join Blazing Blood, the combat division will issue an upgraded Beast Core and core armament. With everything explained, he announces that the test will begin immediately. The first candidate takes the test and receives a D classification, with an affinity rate of 39%. The young man falls to his knees in complete despair, screaming that he placed 5th in physical aptitude and asking how this evaluation could be harder than eliminating aberrations. The chief examiner calls the next candidate, who also receives a D classification, but with an affinity of 56%. He shouts in celebration, saying that he can finally enter blazing blood. Yongqin calls Zhang Jin, and with eyes blazing with anger, he steps into the testing area. After inserting the core, he shouts for the forces to obey him, achieving a D classification with an affinity of 60%. Everyone is impressed, saying that the strongest rookie last year only managed 56%, so he is probably the strongest this year. Zhang Jin begins acting arrogantly, saying that everyone else is nothing but trash because he is the strongest there. The protagonist simply observes. Suddenly, Jin Ying appears behind him, asking if he is from Chi-Chi City, because she has never heard of someone as strong as him. She says she is the resident know-it-all of the Technical Intelligence Department and comments that it is impressive he stayed off her radar for so long. She asks whether the abnormal fluctuation of the crimson mist that occurred in that city days ago had anything to do with him, but the protagonist just smiles and pretends not to understand. She starts walking around him, saying that it is fine if he does not want to admit it, because she just wanted to say that she is really interested in him. The protagonist takes the opportunity and asks for some information. With a smile, she replies that it is no problem, but sets a condition, pointing at the test and saying that he needs to get a higher score than hers. If that happens, she will tell him everything he wants to know. The chief examiner interrupts the conversation, calling Jin Ying to take the test, and she runs off, shouting for everyone to pay attention because she is about to break Zhang Jin's record. The protagonist wonders whether that girl really is that strong, but Zhang Jin appears beside him, saying that she is just a pathetic clown. Jin Ying picks up the crystal and inserts it into the bracelet, asking everyone to watch closely. A few seconds later, the result appears, D classification, but she shouts for everyone to look at the screen because the affinity is 78%. Everyone starts shouting, saying that it is impossible. She laughs and runs up to the protagonist, celebrating that she said she would break the record. Zhang Jin is consumed by rage and envy, swearing that he will not let either the protagonist or that girl escape. The examiner calls Yan Rao, who starts walking forward, thinking that Jin Ying really is very strong, and perhaps was not lying about having a lot of information. She asks whether he feels pressure, but he answers that he is calm and asks her to wait a bit. He thinks that to obtain clues about his younger sister, he needs to win that bet. He holds the crystal, remembering that according to Rui, he is at least a C-rank warrior, and that the core's quality is black, just like the one he absorbed before. When he inserts the core into the bracelet, a C classification appears and everyone is shocked, saying that this is the classification of a squad leader. Suddenly, the system starts signaling an error while trying to calculate the affinity rate. Soon, the result appears, 0%. Zhang Jin bursts out laughing, calling the protagonist a loser and saying that even the core rejected him. Yan Rao looks at the core in confusion as crimson energy begins to seep out, and he realizes that his body is absorbing the core against his will. Jin Ying rushes over to analyze the system, saying that 0% has never happened before and that she needs to record it because the old man will love it. Zhang Jin accuses Yan Rao of having stolen the core since it has disappeared. Yongqin asks Yan Rao to raise his hand to check the wrist protection, and an instructor notices that the core has indeed vanished, demanding an immediate explanation. Yan Rao thinks the situation is awkward and says that he also does not know what happened. He takes a deep breath, knowing he needs to make something up or he will end up as a laboratory test subject. He decides to take a risk and tries to pass bestialization off as a core ability, transforming his hand. Zhang Jin is startled. Yongqin draws his knife and orders maximum alert, telling everyone to retreat. Jin Ying becomes even more excited, asking if that is bestialization. Zhang Jin questions whether the protagonist is infected. The examiner shouts for everyone to retreat, thinking that the only option is to eliminate him on the spot. Jin Ying shouts, asking if Yan Rao can hear her. The protagonist asks what is wrong, and the confused examiner asks whether he has really not gone mad. Yan Rao asks if that does not look like a beast core ability since he did everything on his own and then begins to undo the transformation. Jin Ying runs up to him and hugs him, saying that he has not gone mad and that this is a transformation ability. She says she has never seen anything like it. Yongqin relaxes a bit and says that Yan Rao hit the jackpot, asking whether he can revert on his own after bestialization, because that is unprecedented and extremely rare. Yan Rao looks at Jin Ying and asks who she really is and how she knows so much. She simply smiles and says that she already told him because she is a certified know-it-all. Yongqin introduces her more formally, saying that her name is Jin Ying, a blazing blood candidate for that semester, as well as a senior researcher at the Technical Intelligence Bureau. He explains that her father is Major General Jin Ancheng, who is in charge of the entire Technology Research and Development Department. Jin Ying gets irritated and complains to an instructor, saying that this was confidential information and that now he has completely ruined the mysterious aura she had. Yongqin replies that the act is already over and asks the protagonist to hand over the beast core. Yan Rao does not know what to say, explaining that it is not that he does not want to hand it over, but that the core entered his body and does not want to come out. Zhang Jin watches silently, thinking that the core really did enter his body and that he needs to report this immediately to the Green Vein people because the protagonist has become a perfect test subject. In the radiology room, Yan Rao undergoes examinations, and the researchers are astonished, saying that it is impossible to believe what they are seeing. They state that they do not know how a beast core can grow inside a human body, and that, moreover, the core has completely fused with the protagonist's body, making it impossible to remove. The researchers ask director Jin An-cheng what he thinks. The Major General replies that it is worth studying the protagonist more carefully, because he is certain that this young man still hides many secrets. Soon after, two people enter the laboratory asking about the situation and the background of that boy. An-cheng asks whether Blazing Blood still follows the strict rule of not accepting anyone with less than 40% affinity. Song Lian, Lieutenant General and Chief of Staff of the Special Response Unit, tells the director to stop being dramatic and get straight to the point. An-cheng explains that he led the team that developed the testing equipment together with the Green Vein Group, so he knows better than anyone that the result was not 0%. Jin Ying starts tugging at her father's arm, asking him to say what is going on already. The director explains that the machine was pushed beyond its limits, causing the error, which means that Yan Rao's affinity is unprecedented, exceeding the theoretical maximum of 100%. The Lieutenant General immediately turns around and orders Yongqin to follow him. Inside the examination machine, the protagonist notices that the crystal core is changing from black to red. He wonders if this happened because he absorbed that small crystal, remembering that before, when he absorbed the core of a sovereign-class insect, he stole its abilities and activated the crystal core within his body. This time, even without obtaining a new ability, after absorbing a low-level beast core, the crystal core was strengthened. Its purity increased, becoming scarlet with deep black. The total storage capacity for Crimson Mist was expanded, and absorption efficiency also increased. In other words, the stronger the aberration he absorbs, the stronger he will become. A dull, brownish-red coloration, like ancient rust with dark impurities, appears, indicating that as long as he continues plundering aberrations, he can evolve indefinitely. At the headquarters of the Blazing Blood Special Response Unit, Rui shows irritation, saying that she was the one who brought the protagonist there and questioning what the problem is with letting him join her squad. The lieutenant tells her to control her tone and remember her rank, also asking whether she is getting too attached to a C-rank recruit. Rui replies to her father that she promised to bring the protagonist into her team, and that he cannot turn her into someone who breaks her word. Her father states that a soldier's honor belongs to the state, not to an individual, and that Yan Rao has already been assigned to Yongqin's squad, a final decision. Before leaving, he looks at his daughter and asks whether she is really trying to get him back, ordering her to return to her post immediately. Rui agrees, but thinks she will need to find another way. In the Blazing Blood Barracks Hall, Jin Ying runs over to the protagonist with news, showing a document about a newly discovered nest between Rucheng and Chi-Chi. She explains that Blazing Blood recruits will need to explore it and that she has already confirmed with the instructor that they can form a duo. Yan Rao is currently classified as C and belongs to Lin Yongqin's squad, and he is surprised by the news. When they meet the captain, he explains that the mission is to assess the threat level and that they must maintain maximum alert because even a low-level nest can mutate due to the Crimson Mist. Jin Ying, as a senior researcher, also joins the squad. She says that data collection is her specialty and that the protagonist does not need to worry because she will be responsible for coverage. Sometime later, already inside the vehicle, she explains that nest threat levels are low, medium, high, and extreme. The nest they will investigate is of the hive type, with a simple external structure but extremely complex internal tunnels, making it the most dangerous type. She warns that there will be many worker bees and some soldiers forming a venomous swarm with stingers. The protagonist is confused and asks why they need 3 vehicles if one person alone could not already deal with that kind of nest. Jin Ying replies that she already explained that these are not ordinary bees. The driver then notices something approaching. Looking out the window, the protagonist sees the wasps arriving and is surprised by their size. Jin Ying corrects him, saying they are Scout-class iron bees, not honeybees. The unnamed soldier begins swerving to avoid the swarm, telling everyone to hold on. Suddenly, the stingers are fired at them. Jin Ying shouts that it is the iron bee's iron sting attack and that the armored vehicle will not withstand it. Yan Rao tells them to leave the external swarm to him, thinking this is the perfect moment to test the new move. He creates an energy wall that condenses around his arms, rips the armored door off, tells everyone to take cover and maintain defense, then charges at the bees. The unnamed soldier is shocked and asks what kind of ability that is, because the protagonist created a weapon using the vehicle's own door. Jin Ying explains that it is a transformation ability, and that in addition to transforming himself, Yan Rao can overlay the transformation onto other objects, meaning he can turn anything into a weapon, something extremely rare and valuable for study. As the protagonist fights, something green pierces his weapon with ease, surprising him. He realizes that it is stronger than the iron of the iron bees and understands that he needs to find the origin of the attack. He warns the group that there is another enemy and that the source of the attack is unknown, and tells Jin Ying to seek cover. They stop the vehicles near a rock, but a soldier advances, ignoring orders. He claims that iron bees fear fire, but is struck when a spike pierces the fuel tank behind him, causing an instant explosion. Yan Rao asks Jin Ying what those green spikes are. She replies that it is probably a hound-class queen bee, whose stinger contains corrosive venom, capable of piercing armor below C rank. She warns that if there is a hound-class creature, then the information was wrong and this is not a low-level nest. Yan Rao tells her to handle the workers while he personally goes to defeat the queen. Jin Ying releases her wind elemental power, creating a storm that scatters the workers and opens a path. The protagonist locks onto the target. The queen bee prepares to attack him as Yan Rao creates a new, more refined weapon and hurls his spear with full force. The weapon pierces the queen's abdomen with ease. He states that it was a direct hit, but then realizes the creature keeps advancing. Jin Ying becomes alarmed, saying that this is impossible because the vital point was struck, yet the queen acts as if it suffered no damage at all. She starts wondering how a hound-class Rond could have so much power, and maybe it is because Jin Ying runs up to Yan Rao, telling him not to let that bee escape because it is evolving into a sovereign-class creature, but the protagonist drops to the ground, saying it is better to leave it alone, since there is no energy left in his body. He thinks that without the crimson mist to sustain him, his energy is depleted in an instant, and for that reason, he needs to be more careful, because if he had conserved energy for the queen bee, he might have been able to defeat it. Jin Ying looks at him and asks what is going on, saying that if he wants to regain some stamina, she can perform mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. But he gets up and says he has no interest in little kids. Jin Ying asks who he is calling a little kid, offers him a chocolate bar, and says he needs to eat something and rest. The protagonist explains that the lack of energy is not due to hunger. Other people begin to approach, and the unnamed soldier asks his friend if he is all right. The protagonist says yes. The group states that they need to clear the area, set up a temporary defensive position, and report the incident immediately. Jin Ying says that they are already working on it at that very moment.